This is Prayer in the Kingdom, Part 5. We'll end this up today on prayer in the kingdom. And I'm going to go to Luke. Luke chapter 11. And I want to read you from Luke chapter 11. And it came to pass that as he was praying in a certain place, this is Jesus as he was praying in a certain place, when he ceased, one of his disciples said unto him, Lord, teach us to pray, as John also taught his disciples. And he said unto them, when you pray, say, Our Father. Now listen, you guys know this prayer here. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. You guys know that prayer. But what gets me is what happens right after he says this prayer. He goes right into a parable. And you remember we talked about parables, Kathy, how they're meant to shock you, how they're meant to wake you up. Now, you would think all the time he's given parables, he's given it to these Jews that are out here, these hard. This parable he's given right to the disciples who just asked the question, Lord, teach us to pray. And he said, I'm in verse 5, and he said unto them, and oh, you know this parable. You've heard it 1,000 times. Which of you shall have a friend, shall go unto him at midnight and say to him, Friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine is in his journeys come to me, and I have nothing to set before him. And he from within shall answer and say, Trouble me not, the door is now shut, and my children are with me in bed, I cannot rise and give thee. I say unto you, though he will not rise and give him, because he is his friend, yet because of his, here's the word, importunity, he will rise and give him as many as he needeth. And I say unto you, ask, it shall be given, seek, you shall find, knock, it shall be opened. Every one that asketh, receiveth. He that seeketh, findeth. To him that knocketh, it shall be opened. I won't go anymore. That's enough for us to talk about. Probably one of, all the time I say this, I'm going to say it again, probably one of the most misunderstood parables that they are. Every time I read a parable, I say it's probably one of the most misunderstood. I'm going to add this one to the list. Probably one of the most misunderstood. Look what the desire of the disciples are. Jesus prayed in a certain place. They must be watching, hearing something. Their desire is, Lord, teach us to pray, as John also taught his disciples to pray. Jesus gives them the words, and look how he starts. Can you imagine this? Listen, this word, Father, right here, you know what's the word for Abba? Can you imagine? Jesus said, okay, guys, you want to learn how to pray? Start out with Dad. I mean, come on. Yeah, I mean, I know this is a shocking statement sometimes, but I mean, our translation of the Greek word Abba is Daddy. Isn't that, generally speaking, the first word a child learns to say is Daddy? Take that, you moms. That's the only time they call us after that's to get money. By the way, Dad. But he starts out, think of the shock of, I mean, that's what I've been talking to you about, the shock. I mean, think about Bill Gates giving you all of his money. The man that was a hard man. You remember all the time, the kingdom of heaven is like. And we tried to make note of this fact that we push things off to God's will, right? And he's going to talk about that, and I'm going to show you where all this plays in. But you know, we pray and we have a desire, and then how do we cancel out our desire? Well, God, whatever your will is. Whatever your will is. Whatever you want, God. I mean, he tells us whatever you pray, Ask in my name. God is calling us to exercise our will to join with His will. I mean, this is what this parable is going to talk about. The message, listen what Jesus is telling. The whole message of this parable is ask. Ask. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. Ask. Ask with no shame. Ask with reckless abandon. Ask with nothing held back. That's what this parable is teaching us, and I'm going to show you. But in the church world, and I'm going to tell you about myself, I'm too proud to ask. Got many, many reasons for not asking. Doesn't think God has time. Well, this is too small a thing. Here's the big one. I'm not worthy. I'd rather have somebody else pray. You know, God, I can't go talk to God. I mean, Kathy, I'd rather you go pray, because if I go, He knows what kind of person I am, Denise. And me coming up in there, and because my first thought is, I'm going to say, God, I need this. He's going to say, after what you did? No way. So let's backdoor God. I'll get Denise to ask. God will say, yeah, Denise, whatever you ask, you're holier than thou. You see what I'm talking about? This is our mindset of prayer. That's why we always want somebody else to do it. That's why 5 people show up at a prayer meeting, 48 churches. Or what if I ask something wrong? What if I ask something that's against God's will? Universe might blow up. Right? What if I go in there and say, God, this is my heart's desire, and God says, boom, there it goes. Planets into smithereens. We have all this mental stupidity when it comes to prayer. Look at verse 1. Lord, teach us to pray. And verse 2, right? When he's talking about it, he says, when you pray. I mean, if we was to write this verse now in the church world, the disciples asked Jesus, teach us to pray as John taught. And Jesus said unto them, get in the lotus position, head bowed, eyes closed, knees crossed, face on the floor. Right? That's how we would write it. But Jesus said, hey, when you pray, say, Daddy. I mean, prayer to us today is some sort of meditation. Is it not? Some sort of mantra that we do. It's none of that. It's reckless asking. They say, Jesus, teach us to pray. He says, ask. Ask. See, it all begins here, guys, with our relationship. Notice how it starts out. Our Father. Our Daddy. That's the first thing. That was the first message Jesus preached when He rose up from the dead. Do you realize that? The first message Jesus preached was, I ascend unto my God and your God, my Father, your Father. Before that, guys, they would have never dreamed of calling the Almighty Father. He's the God of Abraham, the God of Jacob, the God of David, and now He says Father. And all our relations, all our asking springs out of that relationship. We're His children. We're His loved. We're His beloved. I'm loved by you. We sang it over and over. I'm loved by you. It's who I am. Do you really believe that? If we believe that, do we believe that we live in the blessed assurance that I'm loved by the Father and I have the right to ask? As a matter of fact, it's His desire that you ask. Just like this table that we set out. He said, look, we think we're doing something. God, He said, man, I want to meet you right there. It's my desire. I mean, look how He says, pray what? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Prayer begins with intimacy. when we're confronting the needs of those that are close to us, our own needs of the world, we move from that intimacy with the Father. That's our base, and we move from that, I'm loved by you, into bold asking. And that's what this parable is all about. This parable tells us how bold. So here we are. You guys know this parable. This parable, again, is meant to shock your ears. And this, what I'm going to tell you today, it's going to shock your ears. It's going to rock your world. I promise you've never heard this before. We got three friends. Three friends. Got one friend that's in the middle. This is you and me. The one friend in the middle. That's you and me. We can be friend number one and friend number two. But one friend in the middle. He says, a friend came to me very, very, very late in the evening in need. This friend receives that friend, and he goes to another friend and wakes up the entire neighborhood and asking friend number three for 3 loaves. For friend number one. So I got friends. Thinking about what Patty said. Listen to this right here, verse number 6. For a friend of mine in his journey has come to me. Man, I'm going to tell you what, we could spend a week talking about that little phrase right there. A friend of mine in his journey has come to me. How many people on their journey of this life come to you and they're in need? See, this is meant to shock our ears. Wake us up. Now this word friend, we've talked about this in our covenant teaching a little bit. This word friend is not a Western culture friend. Oh, he's my BFF. He's my best buddy. Throw that thinking out the window. Jesus is a Jew. He's a Hebrew, and he's talking to other Hebrews. So they understood when this was a heavy word. Abraham, the friend of God. It wasn't just, hey, me and Abraham, we kind of like each other. He's my friend, and it was a heavy word used to describe a covenant relationship, a very special word. It meant between you two there was a sworn oath, an oath that was sealed in blood. I'll be faithful to you even unto death. That's what this word meant. I mean, so that if that's the case, how many friends do you really have? But to the Middle East, to the Middle Eastern culture, to call somebody your friend was the highest honor. It was an honored title. So friend number 2 is going to friend number 3 and asking for loaves because he understood the covenant relationship. See, it's not that way in our Western culture, in our times. But in Bible days, it was this way. It was covenant relationship. And in covenant relationships, you had obligations to family. Your whole family was set up as a covenant relationship. And even more so, all your brothers and sisters and all the Hebrews, okay? Didn't matter where they at, they were in covenant relationship. So as an Israelite, this is what he's telling them. As an Israelite, your responsibility to another Israelite was of covenantal relationship. It was covenant. This is what's going on here. Now you don't understand why I took so long to talk about covenant. Because in order to understand these verses, we gotta have some basis to work from. Covenant. See, this guy's not dropping by a friend's house asking for a cup of sugar. He's not knocking on some neighbor's door and saying, hey, can I borrow some sugar? Sorry, I don't have any, Oh, we're going to knock on this one. I know them. Johnny lives here. Can I have a cup of sugar? No, this is about covenant relationship. Now let me give you the story here. In these days, you know, there's no Days Inn. There's no Motel 6. There's nowhere to stay. So usually you plan your journey to get to the village you're going to about an hour before dark. An hour before sunset. Friend number one has gone beyond this. You see what I'm saying? Because it tells us a friend came to him at midnight. So friend number one comes to friend two. It's nearly midnight. And he's probably a total stranger. Traveling. Now, we talked about this in our covenant teaching too. There was a covenant, there was an unwritten law, a custom in the Middle East, still a custom today, that when I come to a village, usually you get there before sunset, I find a tent, because that's what they were. We get this thing in our mind of all these people lived in tents. They're in the Middle East. They may have a house with a door on it. I'm telling you, I wish I could have took you to that CFAT place and see how they live today over there. One of the places we went to was India. And they had their little mud hut, and one of the big things on it was a porch. And the reason they had the porch was because if me being a male go into that house, I can go into that house and visit with the man of the house, but all the women's got to leave. They got to go out on the porch. Or the man comes out on the porch and we visit on the porch. We're not allowed in the same room, even though it's a one-room house. That's culture that we know nothing about. But in those days, when you're on your journey, you come up to a tent and you go hold on to that tent rope. And in so doing, you're asking for the privilege that I might come under the shadow of your roof. Or if I would come up to the door and place my hand on the door, then I'm asking to come under the privilege of the shadow of your roof. Now this expression is used in Psalm 91 in verse 1. It says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." And in the Bible days, now get this, this is why it's so far removed from our Western culture thinking. Because we're so individualistic in the Western world. Everybody wants to do their own thing, but in the Western world, well, listen, in the Eastern world, when somebody came to your door and came to grab a hold of your tent rope, they were viewed as a gift of God. That God Himself had sent that person to you. That's the reason the writer of the Hebrews, isn't it something that's a writer of the Hebrews, maybe in Paul, may have been Barnabas, who knows, who cares? You ever read chapter 13? What's he say? You've entertained angels unawares. He's talking about the hospitality of when it went to a Hebrew culture, when somebody came into your life, you didn't look at it as a burden. You looked at it as a gift from God. As if it was God Himself coming to live with you. So this is the hospitality that they would be given to these people. Now, I got to ask you a question. Is that the way it is today in our Western culture? Not even a hint of being the way it is in our Western culture. Only people that come to our doors are burdens, and you don't go there unless you're invited. In these places, they didn't have anywhere else to go, so they came and knocked on a door, put their hand on a door, grabbed a hold of the tent rope. When this happened, it meant that whoever came would get every piece of food you had in the house, even if your family had to starve. Because you didn't view it as, oh, Lord, I don't have enough. Why did He stop here? You know, you're looking out the little peephole. Oh, I see a stranger coming. Please, God, let him go somewhere else. They would be with anticipation waiting on someone to come in their life. They would tell their kids, sorry, you're not eating. We're taking care of this stranger. Strangers sleep on the floor? No way. You're sleeping in my bed. It's the way they looked at it, because to them it was well, what would you do if Jesus showed up at your house? Oh God, I hope he don't come in. Get the feeling right here. What he's telling them, because these guys understood that culture. It's like God himself showed up and knocked on the house and said, I'm hungry. What are you going to do? Oh Lord, I don't have any food. Maybe they didn't have it. This guy didn't have any food. What's he going to do? He's going to go ask. Listen, if Jesus showed up at your house and wanted a peanut butter sandwich, and you know I had a jar of peanut butter next door, would you bust my door down to get it? I mean, would it even bother you what I thought? I mean, just think about that. This is what he's telling them. Would it bother you if Jesus wanted a peanut butter sandwich and I had 5 jars in my house and bread and you didn't have it and we live next door? Would you bust my door down to get it? Get the gist of what's going on here. You remember the strangers that showed up to Abraham? We got the privilege of reading the Bible. He didn't know who they were, did he, today? They were just 3 strangers showed up, man, and he's killing cows and they're having dinner. That's the hospitality. How about, now maybe you'll get to understand this verse a little bit better. How about Elijah? Elijah shows up to a widow woman and says, give me something to eat and drink. I ain't got nothing but one more little old piece of bread. Who got it? Elijah got it. Can you see? See, in my Western thinking, I always thought that was one of the coldest scriptures ever. Because I said, how could a prophet of God ask a woman to give her her last piece of bread? Well, she's got a son right there. They were going to eat the last cake and die. But now that I see covenant, he's showing up, reminding her of covenant, saying, look, you get a hold of this covenant right here. It may be your last piece of bread, but believe you me, it'll never go dry. It'll never run out when you get a hold of this covenant. So now I begin to understand. Let me tell you a little bit something else about this covenant was. Let's say that I am your enemy and I'm chasing you and I want to kill you. And you go in to somebody I know's house and you grab a hold of their tent rope. The house that you go in is now responsible to fight your enemies. The guy's house you go in is now responsible for you. Now go back and read Psalm 91. Come under the shadow of his wings. I'll protect you with my life, he says. I'm telling you what, this customs is still going on right now in the Middle East. Right this very day. I'm going to tell you what. When the Russian occupation of Afghanistan, you remember, they fought all through the 80s. They fought 20 years over there. There was a Russian soldier that got surrounded by the Afghani troops. He's about to be killed. He is their enemy, right? The Russians were the Afghans' enemy. He is about to be killed by their troops. He grabs a piece of bread and he, in his rudimentary language, calls upon covenant under the shadow of the wings. And you know what they did? They took him in. And they protected him. He was their sworn enemy. But he called on covenant. And they brought him in and protected him. It happened in the 80s. So here we are. It's late in the evening. Someone is at the door. You see a stranger. Obviously this guy's been journeying all day, late up into the night. He's exhausted. He's starving. He's hungry. He doesn't say anything. He's got his hand on your door. You bring him in, but you don't have anything to give. The cabinets are empty. There's no peanut butter. Walmart's closed. What do? You don't go pet the little guy on the shoulder and say, Oh, it'll be okay. Let's wait till morning. Just go to sleep. It'll be okay. No, you look at this as being a gift from God. See, we got to change our view, change our thinking, and see that people that come in our life are a gift of God. We think they're a nuisance. We think they're just troublesome. God sent them there for a reason. Well, you don't have nothing to give. Well, good. That's why I'm telling you about this parable. I'm going to tell you there's one that is. You see it as a gift of God, and that you have been appointed to meet His needs. Did you just hear what I said? You have been appointed, picked out, selected from God to meet people's needs that come into your life. Now we look and our cabinets are empty. Silver and gold have I none. So what do? I go to my covenant friend, who is as committed to you as God Himself. Your covenant brothers, your friends. He also understands you had a visitor late at night. You can't go without feeding him because he understands. You cannot go without feeding him. He understands the need, the necessity, the covenant. He understands what has come into your life, a great gift of God. And absolutely, you can't send this guy to bed hungry. Absolutely. It's unfathomable to even think about sending this guy to bed hungry. He's come to you. I mean, he understands this can't be tolerated. I must meet this person's needs who has been given to me by God. I don't care if it's midnight. You know, midnight Bible days, midnight now is nothing. You know, we can stay up all night and watch TV, but, sundown, they're going to bed. Here it is midnight. It's all quiet. Nothing's moving. Crickets chirping. Now that brings us to this verse 8. Now, and this is what I got to talk to you about a little bit. I say unto you, though he will not rise and give him because he is his friend, yet because of his importunity he will rise and give him as many as he needeth. What is your thinking on this word importunity? I can guarantee you it's the same thing as mine, because he begged and nagged. His persistence, he just kept begging and nagging and nagging. And here's this guy saying, I'm in my bed, I'm asleep, I don't want to get up. And just because you nag me so much, right? Isn't that how they tell you to go pray? Just keep nagging God. Just keep going over and over. The widow woman praying to this unjust judge, and we'll just go, keep nagging God. Oh, God, if we can get 100 people to nag God, He's got to give in. He's got to get up and do something about it. That's our whole thinking because of this word, importunity. Our thinking is this guy's in the bed. He don't want to get up. And finally he says, for goodness sake, I'll give you 3 loaves. My God, you keep nagging me, waking up everybody, and I'm just going to get up here, take you 3 loaves, you stinking nagger, and go on. So what do? We come with the conclusion that we need to nag God to death. This word, importunity, it's only used twice in the Scriptures. Right here being one of them. And it's not begging. It's not nagging. It's not persistence. The only other time it's used in the Bible, it's used in the negative form, the Greek form in negative. When, in 1 Timothy 1:19, when it says a woman should adorn herself shamefacedly, that's the negative. That's the word in the negative is modest. Here it's used in the positive. Do you see what I'm saying? In the negative, it's modest. But here it's used in the term for is immodest, brash. You could even say because he was rude. You get the picture? It's midnight. He's knocking down the door. Wake up, I need you. He's shameless. He's not modest. He's brash. He's saying, wake up, I need you. A gift from God has came. I have nothing to give him. I need 3 loaves now. This cannot be tolerated. He's reckless in his asking. He's bold. He's not even being a gentleman. He's rude. He's banging on the door. Do you see what I'm saying? He keeps on until his friend appears. Now listen, this is where it gets tricky. We read this, I got a King James Bible right here. Do you realize that when they wrote, Dr. Luke wrote this, you know, Mark is Peter's translation. I bet you didn't know that. Mark is Peter's gospel because Mark wrote what Peter said. Dr. Luke right here, he's writing. When they wrote in the Greek, they wrote in all caps and no punctuation. You do realize that. We've added semicolons and question marks and periods and all these other things. In the original Greek manuscript, there was no punctuation. It was just all capital letters. They had to figure out where a sentence started, where one ended, where to put a question mark, where to put a period, a comma, a semicolon, whatever. Get the tone right here. He says, now listen, you'll see where this comes about. A friend of mine in his journeys come to me and I have nothing to set for him. Get the tone right here. I mean, I've told you about covenant friends. Get the tone. Hey, I need to feed him. Remember, Jesus is telling us a parable because they ask him, teach us to pray. So never forget the context here. A friend has come to me in his journey and I don't have anything to give to him. Now look at verse 7. And he from within shall answer and say, trouble me not, the door is now shut, my children are with me in bed, I cannot rise and give thee. See, if we just read that in the Greek and not stay with the tone, we'll put a period right there. Because it makes it look like the guy is knocking on the door and the other guy says, I don't really want to fool with you, I'm in my bed. But what Jesus is really saying, guys, you understand covenant. You go to a friend's house, is he really not going to get up and answer you? Question mark. Do you see what I'm saying? And he from within, I mean, Jesus is saying, do you really think the guy that is your friend, covenant relationship, covenant oath, committed to you with an oath of blood, is really going to sit there and say, trouble me not, the door is now closed? Do you see? Question mark. Jesus is asking them, do you really think your covenant friend will do that? We changed the whole context of the sentence by putting a period there. A period makes a statement. I'm not getting up and giving you anything. That's King James Western culture. But in Middle Eastern culture it says, do you really think he's not going to get up and give you something? Will that friend say, go away, don't bother me? The doors are shut, I'm in the bed, go away? Will he really say that? And look at verse 8. I say unto you, though he will not rise and give him because he is his friend, yet because of his importunity he will rise and give him as many as he needeth. What is he saying here? It sounds... He goes to that man because he's his friend. He knows his friend. He knows he can ask his friend anytime, day or night. He's banging on the door at midnight, is well within the scope of the kind of relationship that they have as covenant friends. I mean, do you realize that? I mean, you guys have people in your life and your families right now, doesn't matter what time they show up. I mean, just think about your own kids. It doesn't matter. If they showed up at 4:30 in the morning, would you get up and give them something to eat? That's in the scope of the relationship. Right? That's in the scope. So it's okay. I can't say, well, there's this guy I hear on the radio all the time. And he said, I'll take prayer requests, but none after 10. I go to bed. See, that's the scope of the relationship. The scope of the relationship is I will pray for you from 8 o'clock p.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. And after that, it's outside of the scope. And covenant relationship is, buddy, you knock. You knock. The scope of the relationship is time is irrelevant. Now listen to what he says right here. Though he will not rise and give him because he's his friend. Now this brings about a little trouble. What's he talking about right here? He doesn't get up and give to him because he's his friend. What does that mean? And it's wonderful. They had covenant friendship. They couldn't be closer. This guy had the privilege of knocking on his door at midnight. He could come to his friend's house at all times. But because they had that relationship, did not put bread on the table, did it? Suppose you come to me in the middle of the night. You're hungry. I'm friend number 2. You on your journey. You come to me. I bring you into my house. You're under the shadow of my wings. I set you there. And I say, I got a wonderful covenant friend. He lives 2 blocks away. I'm sure he'll just show up. Do you get what I'm saying here? He'll use his crystal ball and he'll just show up. I'm sure he will because he's my friend. So you just sit there and be hungry. My friend will never let me down. Do you hear what Jesus is saying? He's not getting what he needs based on friendship, but because he asked his friend. Did you see? So that brings you right into the equation. He asked his friend in the spirit of necessity that presented itself at his door. He comes to his friend at midnight banging on the door. Will his friend tell him to go away? Of course not. He's going to get what he needs. But he won't get what he needs just because they're friend. He gets what he needs because he asked his friend. Am I bringing prayer around to you a little bit so that you can begin to understand? He gets what he needs because he asked his friend with no shame. He can even be rude with his friend. How can he do that? Because he knows his friend. He knows his friend. They know covenant. Somebody, a gift of God has showed up, and it cannot be that the guy goes hungry. There's a great necessity here. So I can go in there and request what I need because we have a covenant relationship. Now, why do you think Paul said we can come boldly to the throne of grace? We think that stuff, but we don't really believe it. We think it's too extraordinary. It's for somebody else. I mentioned this the last time I was here. I'll bring it back to your attention. The kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, the violent take it by force. I told you love is violent. Love is violent. Remember me telling you about the rat in the crib eating the baby? What do? You get violent. Why do you get violent? Because of love. A love that sees a rat in the crib eating a baby, and everything in you rises up to get the rat out of there. Love is violent. Love says, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. No, it's not going to be. Rage in love rises up in rage, and violent rage and says no. And I told you a snake has been let loose in the human race. Jesus is saying there is a need and it has arrived at your door and you are responsible to meet it. Nobody likes that, do they? All we want in the church world is to fly away and get out of here. And he says, listen, I put it in your hands. You're responsible to meet the need. It's why I don't have anybody here. Nobody wants to be responsible. Everybody loves God, but they don't want to be responsible for your neighbor's needs. God brings them to your doorstep. And he's given you this great gift called prayer. And he says you can come to me even rudely. Do you hear what I'm saying? Even rudely, because I know this need must be met. Get what I'm saying? Then I react with a holy violence. I beat the door down. I don't care if the dogs are barking. I don't care if it wakes the neighbors up. I don't care what they think. I've got this need that must be met. And in love, we go and ask the one who has the bread.
Yes, yes.
Notice here he's very specific. I need 3 loaves. I've done the math, calculated it all out. I need 3 loaves. 3 loaves can meet my friend's needs. I mean, remember we've talked about this. We get lost trying to find the will of God. What is it? What is it? What is it? God says, what do you want? What do you want? Think about it. He's specific here. You've woken up the neighbors. You've woken, all the dogs are barking. You've got no shame. Now that you've got my attention, what is it you want? Supposing the guy says, well, whatever you think I need. Whatever you think would be best. I'm asking within the scope of this covenant relationship for 3 loaves. The bottom line is I need 3 loaves. 3 loaves to meet this guy's need, and I need it now. That's within the scope of this relationship. Listen, this is other places in the scriptures. Let me give you this one here real quick. I'll just read this one here real quick to you. Mark. Listen to this. Mark chapter 10, verse 46. They came to Jericho, and as they went out of Jericho with the disciples and a great number of people, blind Bartimaeus sat by the highway side begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out, say, Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me. Many charged him, hey, we don't do that around here. It's not the way we function. It's not the way we roll up in here, brother. You need to shut up, you old blind beggar. We deal with beggars on Tuesday nights from 8 to 10. This is out of the scope. But he didn't give a hoot about their scope, and he cried the more. Now, son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stood still. You've got my attention. And he commanded him to be called. And they called the blind man, saying to him, be of good comfort. You've got his attention. He's awake. Here he is. You've got his attention. And I love this. And casting away his garment, casting away his modesty, casting away his being ashamed and unworthy, he cast it all away. He realizes his covenant, his cabinets are empty. He's cast it all away. And he came to Jesus, and Jesus asked him, what do you want? King James, Jesus, what wilt thou that I should do unto thee? The blind man said, I want to see. How simple. Jesus is asking you, what do you want? What's the need? I'm asking for this person that's been brought into my life, placed at my doorstep. And I'm coming to ask with unlimited boldness. Now listen, stay with me here. Now the guy goes in and asks for 3 loaves. Does he get his 3 loaves? Back in the story. He gets his 3 loaves. Now, think about this. He just changed from being a petitioner. He's not a petitioner anymore. Now he's got 3 loaves. His friend is at his house, sitting there, waiting to eat. So now he just went from being a petitioner to a provider.
Yes, yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
He became an intricate part of this whole equation. See, prayer ain't shooting off prayer to see what will happen. Prayer time, let me think. Julie, yeah, pray for Julie. Yeah, if something's going on, I don't remember what it was. No, there's a need. Listen, guys, if you'll just be truthful in prayer, you ain't got to think of it. We come up with, we say these things, and anybody got any prayer requests? Let me think. Oh, yeah, forgot. Let's pray for this. Oh, it's a good idea. What is burning in your heart? Why do you think Peter and John fixed their eyes upon their man? Thousands of people, Jesus walks up and sees one guy there at the pool of Bethesda. Why? Because that was the burning need right there. What is the burning need in your heart? That's what God has placed to get you into being a petitioner, to bring you into a provider. That's what He's doing. Every one of you have got these things. They come in your life. That's the reason we pray without ceasing, because they come and they go in your life every day, everywhere. They come into your life needing something. You, being the body of Christ, become the petitioner and then the provider. I've got a need here. There's a need, I must have it. 3 loaves. I mean, praying, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. But we don't really mean it. Truth is, there's a need and I must have it. There is urgency, a beautiful violence. We become part of the prayer. The petitioner becomes the provider. Remember, Jesus said in Matthew 21:22, whatsoever you ask in prayer. You know, He uses a little word, believe. Believe that you receive it. Now here, what do we do with that? We get it. We try to mental think about it. I got to believe real hard. We usually use it for stupid stuff, but I believe I'm going to have a new car, so I'm going to sit here and believe. Believe. It's not mental assent. I've told you that word believe there is the word faith. It's the verb form of faith, translated as believe. And faith, I've told you, is an action. It's a response to something. So He says, whatever you desire, ask. And He's saying in that asking, there's your faith. This faith that says, I need 3 loaves. I need them right now. Do you see what I'm talking about? Now listen. This is my desire. I see the need. But remember, where are you? You're in Christ. Where is Christ? Christ is in you. Christ is in the Father. I and you, you and me. I and the Father. You play a vital role in bringing the 3 loaves. Such a vital part. If you don't ask, the stranger, the friend number 1, don't get the loaves. Does it? In this story, if you don't go ask, he don't get the loaves. See, I told you, I'm talking about that would be no more children tossed to and fro. Because responsibility is not a word that you use with children, because children don't want to do anything. They want no responsibility. But now I'm telling you what, we got a world out there that's a mess, that's hungry, that's starving, and is in need, and a church world who wants to close the doors, lock them off. And He's saying if they're going to get anything, it's going to come from you.
Yes.
They're not going to get it anywhere else. You're the body of the living Jesus, ascended King of the universe. They're not getting anything except to come through you. And I'm telling you, your first part is to ask. All our communities downtrodden and all this stuff. What have you done about it? See, we got invaded by Greek philosophy. Greek philosophy that says God is over yonder and I'm here. There's a great separation. Pray that God shows up today in some form. He's here. He lives in you. You live by Him. You breathe His very life.
Yes.
Do you understand there is a union of head and body, and we are His body in this earth? United with the King of the universe by the Holy Spirit. Yes, He rules it all, but He will not do anything in this world unless we ask. 5 people show up, 48 churches for prayer, because we think prayer is unimportant. Prayer is something we can put on Facebook. You see what I'm talking about? Listen, I could go out right now and call for a great prayer meeting in Tazewell County. How many would show up? Nobody, because nobody really believes in it. Oh, I pray a National Day of Prayer. Do you really believe what I'm telling you? So you're actually bringing about history that wouldn't have been unless you ask? When you pray, your will is joined to His will. He sees the world through your eyes. You're going to bring about the doing of His will, producing a God love history that wouldn't have been here unless you ask. You're the means of the delivery in prayer of giving bread to those in need. Let me give you a couple verses here. 2 Corinthians chapter 2. Listen to this. 2 Corinthians chapter 2. Verses 8 through 11. For we will not, brethren, have you ignorant of our trouble which came to us in Asia, that we were pressed out of measure, above strength, insomuch that we despaired even of life. But we had this sense of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God which raiseth the dead, who delivered us from so great a death, and doeth deliver, in whom we trust that He will yet deliver. Ye also helping together by prayer for us, that for the gift bestowed upon us by the means of many persons, thanks may be given by many on our behalf. Notice he says, helping together. If you read these verses and understand, who were they helping? They weren't helping Paul understand a little English. They were helping God. Did you hear what I just said? They were helping God. They were cooperating with God. Being co-laborers together with God. You cooperated with God in our deliverance. There had to be human voices praying. There had to be people expressing the will of God be done on earth. And God, of those translations right there. The Message translation for those verses. We don't want you in the dark, friends, about how hard it was when all this came down on us in the Asia province. It was so bad we didn't think we were going to make it. We felt like we'd been sent to death row, that it was all over for us. As it turned out, it was the best thing that could have happened. Instead of trusting in our own strength or wits to get out of it, we were forced to trust God totally. Not a bad idea, since He's the God who raises the dead. And again, He did it. Rescued us from certain doom. And He'll do it again, rescuing us as many times as we need. You and your prayers are part of the rescue operation. I don't want you in the dark about that either. I can see your faces even now. I lift it up in praise for God's deliverance of us, a rescue in which your prayers played a crucial part. When you pray for someone, you are actually a part of God delivering the bread. How about Philippians? Philippians 1 and 9. Or 1 and 19, I'm sorry. For I know that this shall turn to my salvation. How? Through your prayer and the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Paul's in jail when he writes this Philippian letter. I mean, do we really believe that my asking without shame will play a part in bringing about a history that would not have happened unless I prayed? How about 2 Thessalonians 3 and 1? Finally, brethren, pray for us, that the word of the Lord may have free course and be glorified, even as it is with you. The word's not going to have free course unless you pray. How about 2 Corinthians 5? Oh, here's a good one. To wit, God was in Christ reconciling the world unto Himself, not imputing trespasses unto them, and hath committed unto us the word of reconciliation. God has laid on us to be the speakers to the world of reconciliation. Look at verse 20. Now then we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God did beseech you by us. In other words, God is entreating you through us. Then look at chapter 6, verse 1. There wouldn't have been these verse breaks. We then, as workers together, co-workers, workers together with him, entreat you or beseech you that you receive not the grace of God in vain. We're co-workers together. Co-workers. Now listen, I'm almost finished. The curse of the church world today is apathy. And again, it comes from this Greek philosophy. It's this Greek philosophy that says God's got a plan. How many times have you heard, God's got it all worked out? God will work it out. God needs you to work it out.
Yes, yes.
He needs you to pray and ask. You're from friend number 3 to friend number 1, you're friend number 2. Your boldness, your rudeness in him and in asking become the petitioner to the provider. We get this Greek philosophy. God is over there. I'm over here. God's got it all worked out. We even say, well, your days are numbered, right? God's got a certain moment that you're going to die, a certain moment of this. And He's got every bird that flies out there. God knows ahead of time when the bird's going to land on this limb and when it's going to come over here. And every little second is planned out. And God's in a box and He can't do nothing about it. Right? We don't want to be responsible for that, do we? We do not want to be responsible for changing history. I heard a guy say, well, even prayer is predestinated because God caused you to pray at a certain moment to make something happen. It's stupid. You've got a blank sheet of paper here. You make history with your prayers. Prayer's the delivery system of the bread. So we nullify our prayers and we say, we pray and we ask and we see a need, and then what do we say? If it be your will. God says, what is your will? I work in you, both to do and to will of my good pleasure. Do you know what let me just throw this out there. God says, work out your own salvation. What does that mean? Now listen, let me tell you this. He wasn't talking to individuals. He wasn't saying, Kathy, work your salvation out and Denise, work yours out. He's talking to the Philippian church. He's talking to a group of believers. You guys, y'all, plural, work out your salvation. Listen, what he means there, if you'll get a good translation and see what this means, it says, bring salvation to its fullest potential.
Yes.
What is its fullest potential? The kingdom of heaven right here on earth. Bring it to its fullest potential. I've given it into your hands to bring this about. But we've got apathy. We've said, oh, God is over there and I'm over here and I just hope you'll come and get me out of here because life is so hard. He says, you have put it into your hands to do something about it. I put it into your hands. What do you have in your hands? What do you have in you? Christ in you. The hope of glory. The expectation. I can pray with boldness. I can go up into a situation and understand darkness is here. And with violent love, go into that situation and ask and be the delivery system of the kingdom of heaven right here. And I can pray that prayer. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Where at? Where at? Where at? Where at? Right here. I want the kingdom right here.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm talking about? I want the kingdom right here. This darkness has been here too long. The rat has been eating the baby too long. And with reckless violence, I can go in there. Because I know my covenant friend. And when I knock, he will get up. Believers get hypnotized. They don't really believe prayer changes anything. Or we say that, oh, prayer changes things. What? 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 I'm not talking about being a bunch of beggars. I started out, they said, teach us to pray. And it gives us this verses. Knock. That's what he says to you. He didn't say come begging. He said knock with reckless abandon. Knock. Knock and what? I'll see if your prayer is worthy. Knock and it will be opened. Ask and you'll receive. What if I don't ask? then I'm just sitting over here like everybody else with a friend in need, and I'm saying, oh, I got a good friend. When he comes by, do you see the difference that I'm telling you about? If I pray for God's will to be done, I'm saying God's will is currently not being done. Right? Well, there would be no need for me to ask for it to be done. I mean, I get it. Look, I can't love. Jesus in me loves. I can't live the Christian life. Jesus in me lives the Christian life. But in Christ we are risen, we are ascended, we are seated together in heavenly places. We have been raised up to be in the heavenly counsel of God. To share what we see on earth in the heavens to God. Do you understand that? We act as if the way things are is okay. I mean, the whole church world system is what? Get us out of here and then judge everything. Well, listen, I was looking up these words. I was looking. Let me just give you a couple scriptures. Jeff, I got 5 minutes, buddy. I promise you I'm out of here. 5 minutes. Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 4. Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 4. Look at this. Just a couple verses. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Do you really believe that? Oh, that's someday. That's over there. He said nations. Where are the nations? If I ain't mistaken, the nations is Japan and Afghanistan and the United States and South America. The nations right here walking around with dirt on their shoes. He says they'll learn war no more. How? Because you're teaching them. Because the judgment has come. But then we get into these verses. The wrath of God. The wrath of God says, I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I'm coming into the human race. I'm coming in to crush the head of the serpent. I'm coming in to do away with the lies and doing away with darkness. I'm coming in. And this work he began. And he continues this on in his body. Listen to what I'm telling you. Oh, but we get to these verses in Matthew, right? Oh, judge not, lest you be judged. Oh, yeah, Kathy. Oh, what are we going to do with that? Judge not, lest you be judged. Oh, and with the same judgment you used to be meted out back to you. That's the next verse, chapter 7. With whatever judgment you judge with will be meted back to you, so you better not judge. Well, let me tell you something. God opened this up to me so plain as day. Jesus is writing concerning the law right here, right? And he says, don't you be judging according to the law. And he says, whatever judgment you judge with, that's what you'll be judged back with. The church world, the reason we can't get nobody is they've been judging according to law. But Paul says, we thus judge. There is a judgment I can judge the world with. We thus judge. If one died, all died. This is the judgment that I can bring to the world. It's called the ministry of reconciliation. I can go out in judgment like Isaiah said and tell the world, you've been judged. You've been judged with a righteous judgment. Christ died for you. He loved you. That's the judgment that I can preach to everyone. And with judgment, he established his house. Judgment must begin at the house of God. Let me give you a couple more verses here. 1 Corinthians 6. Chapters. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 2. Do you not know that the saints shall judge the world? Though God was going to do it. Paul wrote this, guys. I didn't write it. It's right here in the King James book. Don't you know the saints shall judge the world? Yes, God does it. How? He does it in his people. And if the world shall be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest of matters? Know ye not that we shall judge angels? There's a group of people out there. The book It's not popular. People don't like it. They don't want to be responsible for the things that go on around us. We're like Love's Marines, graveyard upsetters. We're going into battle, the army of the living God going into darkness to wage war. To the enemy, we're a terrible sight. My concern is that people are not horrified by the rat in the baby, in the crib eating the baby. We're tolerant. As long as it doesn't happen to me. As long as it don't happen on my block, it's okay. As long as it don't come into my neighborhood, it's all right. We have let darkness rule our history. I'm telling you, no more. Stop accepting the way things are. And let's change it. Let's change it. Listen, guys, it's good to be back. I'll turn this thing back over to Patty. I don't know if you guys knew this. I see Dad go outside, and his sister passed away. I think about them. I think about them things. Listen, guys. God needed another angel. We try to do that to appease our minds of the atrocity of cancer taking another victim. Death is not natural. Let me get that straight. Adam brought in death in the garden. God didn't create death. We did. Every death that takes place is unnatural. Every cancer that kills somebody is not God's will. Don't ever be told it is. It is not. Every baby that dies, God didn't need them in heaven. It's the atrocities of darkness. Every kid that's raped and murdered and all the stupid stuff that goes on, it's not God's will. God's will is the kingdom come. Thy will be done right here. And we are the means of it. You're the bread providers. Just ask. Just go and ask. You got a covenant friend. A covenant friend who won't just stay in the bed. He knows that necessity must be met. I mean, there's a violent rage that rises up inside of me when I hear these things. I mean, it just does, Kathy. It just does. It just rises up, and I just can't stand it. I really cannot stand it. I can't stand sickness. I despise it. That's what we got to have. These things ought not be. I've rambled on. Thank y'all so much for having me back.